Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday afternoon, May 4th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. We have a remarkable weather pattern change that's going to be taking place over the next few days. We're going from one extreme to the next extreme. We have an actual heat dome that will become stationary from Monday through Wednesday at least. This is July level heat. This is a dome of heat. It's a blocking pattern, the exact opposite of what we have this week, which is a progressive pattern, constant pieces of energy, constant low pressure systems. This week has been absolutely phenomenally the opposite of what we're going to be having next week. So this is storm system after storm system after storm system. Sunday, Monday, severe weather. I think Tuesday there was no severe weather risk, but Wednesday, today, severe weather risk. Tomorrow, a severe weather risk. Severe weather risk returns for Shabbos, for Saturday, and especially Sunday. And then Monday and Tuesday, there's questions. There's questions right now as to what the severe weather risk will be. But immediately on the heels of this progressive weather pattern, active all the way, comes a heat wave. It's going to just get stuck over the area. It's a blocking weather pattern. Systems don't move. They move around this high pressure. They don't move into our area, and we're going to see a buildup of heat and humidity. It's barely believable what is being said when it comes to the dew points. Dew points in the 70s here in Chicago. I think an investigation, further research, needs to be done in regards to where's this dew point, 70-degree dew point coming from? Why is this in the forecast? Just a week ago, we couldn't even get the Gulf Coast states anywhere near 70 except for Texas, and that was just upper 60s. You had to go to Key West, Florida a couple weeks ago to experience 70-degree dew points, and now you have a model bringing it all the way up, even into the Chicago area. And what also needs further research is, why is this happening? What's going on? Why is this pattern developing? And with that, we'll be able to determine what's going to happen after that. Because I'll tell you, this comes from the chief meteorologist, Dave Murray, KTVI in St. Louis, Missouri. He lives in Hawaii now. He's retired. But he said the May 11th is the blackberry winter. Every year on May 11th, around May 11th, there's a very cold air mass that comes into the Midwest. And that's the final cold air mass of the season, unless you live in Chicago next to Lake Michigan. So think about it. Today's May 4th. Monday through Wednesday is the period of unseasonable heat. I don't know what's happening after Wednesday. So let's say this year, what's going to happen? Are we getting a blackberry winter this year? What's going to happen then? After Wednesday, are we going to be getting that cold Canadian front that comes in every year right around May 11th? If so, we're going to go from one extreme to the next. Right now, the extremes over here are the weather patterns. We're going from a very active weather pattern. In fact, one of the meteorologists said this is an insane, quote unquote, an insane pattern. What's going on this week is insane. And the last time I heard a meteorologist say that was back by the Pacific Northwest heat wave back in June, which they say happens once every 4,476 years. I think that's what it was. So that's when you start to use the terminology insane. That was the last time I heard it used by a professional. And this weather pattern this past week, where you have severe weather at least every other day or even every day for places out in the plains. And then next week, it's just the opposite. Nothing. Total nothingness. Here in the Midwest, nothing's, just a air mass just remains in place. Thank you for listening. I wish everybody a good day. Now listen to this. Forecasts have higher confidence in regards to next week than this week. The reason is because we're no longer under a progressive weather pattern. We just have one air mass that's going to situate itself over the Midwest, and it's not going to move. This is going to be the first encounter of summer weather. Chicago's too complicated, so let's skip to St. Louis, Missouri. It's just simple. It's just hot and humid next week. High temperatures well into the 90s. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, dew points in the 70s. That's what the European computer model says. How? I don't really know. How could the dew points be in the 70s? I don't know. You look at southern Louisiana, the dew point's about 69, 70. Dew points are pretty much in the upper 60s. Then when you hit St. Louis, the dew points rise into the low 70s. And then you hit Iowa, and the dew point hits 77 degrees in southeast Iowa at some point between Monday and Wednesday. Are the cornfields out? This has got to be from the Midwest Corn Belt. What else could it be from? I don't really know. When does the corn get planted? I don't know. That would be interesting to look into. If the corn is not planted yet, then we have to figure out why these dew points are expected to be so high here in the Midwest. It's a widespread Midwest thing up for Missouri and Iowa, most of Illinois. Usually the first 90-degree air mass of the season doesn't come with 70-degree dew points. We're just skipping. We're skipping from a below normal weather pattern. It's below normal this early in the season, whatever you want to call, whatever season this is. This is early May, late April. It's a below normal weather pattern, perhaps late March weather pattern, and we're going right away. We're jumping into summer right away, into July heat and humidity. You know, the average dew point in St. Louis in July is 67 degrees. Forecast dew points are in the low 70s. You know, a dew point is 75. The temperature of 90 degrees makes the temperature feel about 10 degrees warmer than it is. Dew point, the classic heat wave dew point in St. Louis, I always felt was 72 degrees, and that's exactly what it's going to be next week. That's making temperatures feel 7 or 8 degrees warmer than it actually is, and realize a lot of times in the St. Louis area, there isn't much wind at all. That's something that needs to be looked into. What will the wind be? Because the wind affects heat index. So in St. Louis, usually there's not much wind in July. The question is, what's it going to be next week? You know, it's very interesting because May 11th, some meteorologists call May 11th the blackberry winter. The blackberry winter means around May 11th every year in the Midwest, a very cold air mass comes in out of Canada, and it's the final blast of cold air for the season. This heat wave is going from Monday through Wednesday, maybe longer, but realize Wednesday is May 11th, so we're just about due for that final cold blast to come in. I would imagine it doesn't actually happen every single year, but you have to wonder, is it going to happen again? Because we're going from cold to hot. Are we then going to go back from hot to cold? So that's something that has to be looked into. Of course, here in the Chicago area, we always have to deal with hot to cold until you hit mid-June, says meteorologist Tom Skilling. We're not safe from the cold until mid-June, and that's because of Lake Michigan water temperatures. So we have these fronts, it's called the pneumonia backdoor cold front, that comes through exactly when temperatures heat up. It comes in during peak intensity. Temperatures drop extremely rapidly, and that's why it's called a pneumonia cold front. We might even get a couple of those during this heat wave next week, Monday through Wednesday. One might come in on Monday, another one on Wednesday. So the Chicago forecast is complicated as usual. There's high confidence in at least very warm air reaching the Chicago area. In terms of whether it's going to be a record breaker, well, you know, when you go about 5,000 feet above the surface, temperatures are expected to be about 77 degrees in the St. Louis area. So figure 14 degrees, we would put the high temperature surface temperatures. The air temperature 6 feet above the surface would be about 91 degrees. That's what. But St. Louis, the official station tends to get a little bit hotter than the areas all around there. So let's say it's 91 for most of the St. Louis area. The official station could very well easily hit 93 or even 94 degrees. Full force heat wave begins Monday. Peak heat indices 100 degrees or more. In the Chicago area, I think heat indices will probably remain in the 90s. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone a good night. It's Wednesday, May 4th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. The only thing that could be more inspirational than this is for the heat wave next week to just continue as it did in the year 1994, at least to continue to the point where there's no end to the heat in sight within the 7-day forecast cycle. We have a heat wave, a full force heat wave headed for the St. Louis area next week, Monday through Wednesday. Thank you, audience, for that. This weather pattern is turning over. It's doing a 180 mamish. I'll tell you another tremendous chiddush over here, a big shakaru. And for those familiar with dew points are going up into the lower, mid, and even upper 70s in the Midwest. That is weird. That's weird. That's not normal. Even when we get unseasonable heat this time of the year in the St. Louis area, it doesn't come with the package of a 70-degree dew point. Now, that's what the European computer model says, that the heat is coming with that package of a 70-degree dew point. What that means is that if it was a dry heat, the temperatures would be well over 100 degrees. That's really what it means. And how often do we have 100-degree heat in May? Usually we don't have such high humidity in May, and therefore temperatures are record heat makes it into the 90s because we don't have high humidity. But in this case, we're getting high humidity and temperatures are still forecast to go into the low 90s in the St. Louis metropolitan area. Here's the thing. If temperatures are going into the low 90s across the St. Louis area, the official recording station, unless they fixed it up, the official recording station is going into the mid-90s. The models say it's 77 degrees, 5,000 feet above the surface. That translates to 91 degrees this time of the year, 6 feet above the surface. But I think in the official recording station, we'll have temperatures probably closer to 94 degrees next week. Thank you for listening. I wish everybody a good night and enjoy the weather on May 5th. And we have a very interesting thing developing here for the weekend onward into next week. We have true summer heat. It's going to be the first time temperatures hit 90 degrees in many places in Louisiana, Arkansas. But not only that, it's also going to be the first 90-degree temperatures for places up north. St. Louis, Missouri, Chicago, Illinois is also possible. This is a high-pressure ridge, which is developing going all the way from southern Texas, all the way into the mid-Mississippi Valley, up into the Great Lakes area, up into Ontario and Quebec. That's this whole area. What's interesting is usually when you look on the map, in the summertime heat waves, I'm used to seeing some type of flow off of the Bermuda high pressure system, and then that flow continues into the country and pushes up the Gulf of Mexico. Here, we don't have that flow. The map that I saw doesn't show any flow coming from the Bermuda high at all. All of that is blocked off. All of that is blocked off. The moisture is coming from the Gulf of Mexico. But despite that, dew points are going to be very high. Not only high, I mean, they're going to be probably record territory. That's how humid things are going to be over the next week. Very humid. I have to give an explanation. I just had to find an explanation for why the humidity is going to be so high this early in the season. And I think it's because of all the heavy rainfall. It's going to keep temperatures down by about 3 or 4 degrees than what they would have been without the humidity. I think even more than 3-4 degrees, but forecast highs are going into the upper 90s. The upper 90s. Yes. Thank you, God. The upper 90s for next week for places in Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas. Temperatures in the low or mid-90s for St. Louis, Missouri. Heat indices are expected to remain under 100 degrees for the Gulf Coast states, but not for St. Louis. Heat indices may very well rise above 100 degrees for the St. Louis area. According to one model I saw last night, probably about 102 would be the peak heat index. And I don't know exactly what's happening further north of there, but I do know dew points are expected to rise to even higher levels in the state of Iowa. And I would love to figure out, is there a corn crop or is there not a corn crop? Because if there's not a corn crop, why are the dew points continuing to rise? What could Iowa put into the atmosphere that the Gulf of Mexico has failed to do? The water on the Gulf of Mexico, the warm water there, you would think it's done quite a good job at putting tons of moisture into the air. But Iowa can do it better, right? Iowa is going to bring it up to a new notch. I would think the cornfields, but there are no cornfields, are there? Is May too early for the cornfield? Here's one last point over here, 1 or 2 last points. Friday night will be the final cool night for Louisiana of the season. So that's a good possibility. There will be no more cold weather. The final cool night will be in Louisiana. So we're watching the season of summer like the real summer season, you could say it arrives at a different time every year. Chicago, like there's usually a certain day it gets warm and then it's permanently warm after that day, permanently like for the rest of the summer season. So Louisiana, that day is arriving this Friday night and then it's gone. Permanent summer from this Shabbos onward. That also is true for parts of Arkansas as well. Is it true for, it could very well be true for everywhere unless you're living by a lake, by Lake Michigan. It can't be true here in Chicago because we have lake water temperatures that remain in the 40s. So we're going to have to wait until June. And the Lincoln Park Zoo is not the place to go until those lake water temperatures heat up. You have to go to the Brookfield Zoo, even when days temperatures are warm. So next week, we have warm weather coming into the Chicago area. Temperatures likely highs in the 80s. Lake breeze may develop both Monday and Wednesday. And there might even be hotter weather than that. But St. Louisans should prepare for a real heat wave, heat and humidity, record heat, actually. For real, record heat is expected in the St. Louis area on Tuesday as high temperatures go into the low and mid 90s and near record heat for the other days. You look at these records, you see for Hannibal, I think, or Quincy, the old record's 1895, 1921. These are old records from a long time ago. They might be broken next week, or we're going to come very close to breaking them, despite the high humidity, which is quite amazing. The humidity, again, that lowers air temperatures. Dew points absorb energy. The sun is less efficient at heating air, which is high water vapor. But nonetheless, temperatures are still going to make it into the upper 90s for parts of the south central states. Upper 90s, mid to upper 90s in Oklahoma, that's one thing when you're behind the dry line. 97 degrees in North Platte, Nebraska, when you're behind the dry line, that's one thing. But to have upper 90s when you're in the humid territory, right off the Gulf of Mexico, dew points probably in the upper 60s at that time. That's really something amazing, which will likely be happening next week. And then as dew points rise even further into the 70s, as you get into the St. Louis area, or mid 70s, especially by Iowa, the air temperatures will be reduced to the mid 90s, 90s for a large portion of the area. There's high confidence in this weather pattern developing, and it's not the usual heat wave, actually. It's a real heat wave. We don't even need to rely upon this chusim and the merits of the Atlantic Ocean. It's coming from the Gulf of Mexico itself and our own vegetation right here in the Midwest. The soil, everything is just so moist. It might put those temperatures down, but the heat indices are going to go way up because of the high humidity. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone a wonderful day. Thursday, May 5th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. So I'll tell you the difference between a heat wave is like a polar vortex. It is its own entity. It controls the weather. Weather does not control it. That's the difference between a heat wave. That's the similarity between a heat wave and a polar vortex, and the difference between a heat wave and all other weather. It's like Memayla Minateva. We remove ourselves from total chaos, the chaotic theory, which makes it impossible to forecast weather any more than a few days out. And then comes the heat wave, and the weather all of a sudden becomes forecastable. There's consistency. We're no longer in chaos. It's like its own entity. The question is, could we pull the same thing off here in the month of May? In June, if this would be happening, it's summer, and summer's here to stay. For the Gulf Coast states, the cool weather is over. The last cool night likely will be Friday night. The hot weather blasts in on Shabbos, and the hot weather is here to stay. Heat and humidity build into the south central states, into Texas, and they're here to stay all the way through September. It's it. It's hot and humid down south. Heat comes, it blasts all the way up north, goes through St. Louis, the humidity goes through Iowa. It's here to stay at least through who knows when, it's not clear. Tuesday, high temperatures, mid and upper 90s. Mid and upper 90s in the St. Louis area. I don't know why there's laughing, but we certainly need a drum roll. Now listen to this. Tuesday, the previous record high, 91 degrees in St. Louis, Missouri, set in 1963. The forecast high this Tuesday, says AccuWeather, 96 degrees. I hope everybody enjoys, and thank you for listening. Good morning. It is May 6th, Friday morning. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. We are currently a mere 24 to 48 hours away before a drastic change in the weather pattern. And this time, a change in the weather pattern means a permanent change. Permanent change means this is a change that will last for the remainder of the summer season, all the way through August, or until the aftermath of some hurricane develops in August. There's likely going to be no return to the cool weather. No more temperatures, no more daytime highs of 60 degrees for states like Iowa, or at least those types of days will be very few. And if such a day does occur, it would be because of rain. We've had days of 60-degree highs even in the St. Louis area. It's rare, but it's happened where temperatures did not reach 70 degrees even in the month of July. So those things could happen, but in general, it's expected to be warm from now till the end of the season. That means all the way through August. That does not include September, but we're including all the way through August. The only thing that could hold temperatures down is rain, or if you're by Lake Michigan, or if this forecast is a bust. So we go ahead and we'll talk about it. We have a couple more cool days left, not only here, but also for the mid-Mississippi Valley, even for the southern states on their madrega, on their level, compared to where they should be for normal. Friday night and Saturday, Friday night especially, will be the final cool night of this winter-spring season. If we were to divide the year into the 6 months potential cool year, 6 months where the year could become cold at any moment, that season comes to an end this Friday night for the areas in Louisiana, and then comes to an end for the St. Louis area. Saturday, Shabbos should be the final last day, and Sunday, the final last day for here in the Chicago area and for Des Moines, Iowa. We have an upper-level ridge that's going to build into the region rapidly. That's starting on Saturday late afternoon into Saturday evening, Motzei Shabbos. The warm-up, however, starts a little bit gradual in the beginning. The upper-level ridge is rapid, but the warm-up starts off gradual. We see winds from the northeast on Saturday Shabbos. Abundant sunshine will help boost those temperatures to 70 degrees in the St. Louis area, 60 degrees in the Chicago area. Then we have the winds come around and become more towards the south. For basically, really not just basically, it's the entire week next week. We're going to be under the influence of an upper-level ridge for the entire week. This means we'll be in a hot and humid air mass the entire week. The definition of hot and humid here is not the classic definition of what we say it is, like in the St. Louis area in July, with a heat index of 100 degrees or at least an afternoon high of 90 degrees, although that would be happening perhaps for at least 1, 2, or 3 days in the St. Louis area. But we will be under the influence of a flow off of the Gulf of Mexico. We'll be in a summer weather pattern. It's swimming weather, solid swimming weather. According to the places outside the Fahrenheit system, countries that don't use the Fahrenheit system, the entire world except for the United States, many areas have the definition of a heat wave of 30 degrees Celsius for 3 consecutive days or more. 30 degrees Celsius is 86 degrees Fahrenheit, 85 degrees Fahrenheit could probably also qualify. We're going to, the whole week next week, starting Monday onward, Monday through Shabbos, Monday through Saturday, high temperatures, it will focus, let's say, the St. Louis area. It's much easier to deal with St. Louis because there is no lake, but we can include Des Moines, Iowa as well. There's no lake over there either. Temperatures will be above that 30 degrees Celsius threshold, and if they're not, it's only because of a cloud or a thunderstorm that could pop up in the afternoon, which is more likely to happen in Des Moines, Iowa for the first several days than in St. Louis. Through the rest of the week, high temperatures, 30 degrees Celsius or higher. That's mid-80s or higher. Temperatures actually in the St. Louis area for 3 of those days, maybe even 4, will have high temperatures between 90 and 95 degrees, highs in the low 90s. Let's not say 95, we'll say mid-90s. Highs, generally speaking, probably in the low 90s. But Lambert Field, the official reporting station in St. Louis, could see afternoon highs in the mid-90s, at least for one of those days. And that day right now looks to be Tuesday. If there is a day where temperatures get into the mid-90s, Tuesday is the highest possibility. In Iowa, it's Wednesday. In Chicago, it's also Tuesday. Chicago has a little bit of a problem for those that love heat. For those that don't like the heat, Chicago is going to be amazing. So those that don't like the heat, it's going to be just amazing here in Chicago with high temperatures in the 80s. The interesting thing about this heat is that usually during heat waves, the winds are from the southwest, especially for Chicago. In this case, the winds are from the southeast, eventually perhaps the south, maybe towards the end from the southwest, but there's going to be an easterly component to the wind. So that's wonderful in terms of creating a complexity in the forecast. No issue for any city except for Chicago, because when you have that easterly component, then you have that lake breeze that develops because the lake is to our east, so it enhances the lake breeze, and the water temperature is 46 degrees. So first of all, the National Weather Service warns that hypothermia could occur in 30 seconds. If you are in the lake, if you go to the lake next week, don't go to the lake because it's dangerous because the water is very cold. There's potential, especially for our western counties here in the Chicago area, to go into the low 90s, especially Tuesday. That's going to be the bullseye of the heat here in Chicago. In St. Louis, not only are temperatures forecast to be in the low 90s, it's expected to be a widespread low 90s, and dew points, according to the European computer model, whatever version of the European computer model that they have on the windy.com app, whatever version that has the European computer model is known to be the most accurate. Dew points are forecast in the St. Louis area to be classic, 72 degrees. That's what they are during heat waves. 72, maybe even 73, and at times 74 degrees. Low to mid 70 dew points. The National Weather Service here in Chicago backs that up and says even the Chicago area will be coming very close to 70-degree dew points at times for next week. This warm and humid air stays with all the Midwest for the entire week next week. I haven't looked into Minneapolis, so I don't know about the whole week for Minneapolis, but St. Louis, Chicago, Des Moines, Iowa, and I'm sure Kansas City. I haven't looked into Kansas City and all the places further to the south. Wednesday's peak heating for Iowa, all the way up there, right? Peak heating for St. Louis and Chicago is going to be Tuesday. Temperatures during the peak heating, the warmest day of the week, will likely go into the 90s, at least in some parts of the Chicago area. Des Moines, Iowa, low 90s. St. Louis, low or mid 90s. We actually have some forecasters that feel it's going to be in the upper 90s in the St. Louis area. That's for air temperatures. Dew points in the low 70s. If you have dew points in the low 70s for the St. Louis area, you're talking about heat indices in the upper 90s. The one thing I want to point out over here is that there is a 10-mile-per-hour wind that is forecasted for the St. Louis area. Usually in the summertime, we don't have a 10-mile-per-hour wind. The heat index chart was made for winds which are 5.6 miles an hour, so temperatures actually might not feel like a classic upper 90s heat index. They're going to feel more like a mid-90s heat index. But when you're in the sun, it makes temperatures feel about 14 to 15 degrees warmer, so you're talking about 110. But that's really irrelevant, because whatever the local people who live, whatever you're used to, when you hear the heat index 98, whatever you're used to that feeling like, it's actually going to feel a little bit cooler than a heat index of 98. We still have the potential for the heat index to hit 100 degrees, especially when you look at the dew point chart and you see that the dew points at some point will be in the mid-70s. The question is, will they be in the mid-70s at the same time that the temperature's in the low 90s? What also has to be taken into consideration is those areas which get into the mid-90s, are they getting into the mid-90s by the dew points lowering? The dew points low. When the dew points lower, it releases energy and the temperatures go up. Why are those places going to be in the mid-90s? If the dew points remain high, even in those locations, then we're really talking about heat advisory criteria for Tuesday. That's a possibility. But either way, realize this. As the National Weather Service in Chicago has pointed out, which it's wonderful they pointed this out, people are looking forward to this warmth. It's only dangerous if heat precautions are not taken. Then it's going to be dangerous. But otherwise, it's just going to be an enjoyable, wonderful experience to finally get the cold season over with for all of these places, except Chicago, where we have to deal with Lake Michigan. There will be lake breezes that come in off the lake, and the temperatures are brutally cold. That's what happens. You have lake water temperature 46 degrees. The air temperature is also 46 degrees, and in fact, the air temperatures are even colder because it really goes by what the temperatures are in the middle of the lake. That's something that people living in West Rogers Park will have to deal with in the mid-afternoon, not the early afternoon, but the mid-afternoon onward. People have to watch out for that cold lake breeze, for sudden drops in temperatures every single day next week, even Tuesday. But if there is a day where it's not going to happen, Tuesday would be the day that it's not going to happen, along with perhaps Sunday. But I'm not sure about Sunday. But anyways, the heat and humidity, dew points of 70 degrees are likely every single day in Des Moines, Iowa for next week starting Monday through Saturday, dew points of 78. There's one day the dew point's 68. If we go by the Celsius system, dew points of 20 degrees Celsius or higher is expected every day, Monday through Saturday. I believe it's starting Monday through Shabbos for next week. The cooler air comes in temperature-wise the following Sunday, but we're still in high dew point air. It's not going to be until Monday. This is 10 days out already. 10 days out, maybe even 11 days out, that's when forecasts finally indicate we're going to see an end to the heat and humidity. Heat and humidity, this is like a upper Midwest version of heat and humidity. It's for St. Louisans, when they hear heat and humidity, they're hearing weather like Tuesday's weather. We're not going to be having Tuesday's weather all week next week. As far as I know, it's not going to be low to mid 90s with high humidity, with stuff like that. We'll see highs upper 80s for some of the days with high humidity, and we'll see highs perhaps the final day only in the upper 70s, but high humidity, which remains swimming weather. Upper 70s is generally not swimming weather, but if you have dew points, really high dew points, it remains swimming weather. I've tried it out myself, and it's fine. The only thing is, there's no place to go swimming now because everything's closed before Memorial Day. In regards to thunderstorms, the Chicago area has a good chance for seeing a strong thunderstorm Tuesday night. That might even be true. That might even be true in the St. Louis area as well. The thunderstorm chances increase as we go towards the end of the week and the environment becomes less capped and the ridge starts to weaken. This mid-level ridge, it starts mid-level, upper-level ridge. It starts to weaken, although no one's really sure it's going to weaken. But it seems like it's going to weaken, and that's why those temperatures are going to go down. And we're going to see more clouds, but temperatures will still be summer-like for the rest of the week. So this is it's not really a full week because it starts Monday. The summer weather starts Monday in all of these cities. It's starting Monday. That's when the summer weather's starting. We're going to have beautiful weather Shabbos and Sunday for places not next to Lake Michigan, and almost beautiful even for Lake Michigan, especially with the sunshine. For today, we have a severe thunderstorm risk, severe weather risk going on over in Alabama and Georgia. We also have a risk for a tornado, a very narrow area. This is in northern Virginia. This is southern Virginia and North Carolina. Right along the border there's a risk for a tornado this afternoon. Those are the places that you have to watch out for. We've had some phenomenal reports of rain over the past couple of days. One county in Oklahoma received 9 inches of rain within just a 3-hour period. We have several tornadoes that have struck down in Oklahoma, and One town got hit by a tornado at least once, possibly twice, possibly 3 times. More investigation is needed in regards to that town. Last night we had plenty of severe thunderstorms, not tornadoes as far as I know last night. Tomorrow really would be the final day of this severe weather. We still have a severe weather risk for tomorrow. Then on Sunday, any severe weather moves over to the plain. It moves over to the northern plains, upper Midwest. That's where these storm systems are going to be going. That's where the active pattern continues by the Dakotas once again. Those areas, that's where the low pressure systems are going. And also on the East Coast, we have action taking place over there from a low pressure system that just won't move. It just won't move. In fact, it's moving so slow, it's starting to go backwards already. Especially by midweek, it's going to start to go backwards and interfere with our high pressure ridge. You have to realize this is not a normal heat wave. A normal heat wave has a Bermuda high backing it up. A normal heat wave, it starts in June, and it's more likely to just continue. So this is an end to the cold season, not necessarily permanent summer heat. But we are talking about a week of summer heat and an end to the cold season. According to that, if that is true, we will not have that May 11th. And I don't really think it's a blackberry winter. I have the berry wrong. I have the plant wrong, the bush wrong. But it's a May 11th winter that comes every year. Cold air comes out of Canada, and it's the final cold blast of the season. And it doesn't seem to be in the forecast right now. The question is, what's going to happen after Sunday? After that Sunday, a week from Sunday, cooler air is coming in, a cold front coming in. Could it be that at that point we're going to experience a final blast of unseasonably cold air? Meteorologists going all the way, reading all the way from Louisiana to Des Moines, Iowa, are forecasting a no return. Cold air is not coming back. So will we see it? Of course, their definition of cold air means high temperatures will no longer be in the 50s. They'll be at least 60 degrees or higher. That's the Des Moines, Iowa definition. A St. Louis version of that is more likely 70 degrees or higher. Or if you use the Celsius system, 20 degrees Celsius or higher, 68 degrees or higher for the remainder of the spring and summer season going all the way through August. This does not include September. Hey, thank you for listening. I wish everyone a good day. Have a great weekend. Have a wonderful Shabbos. There's going to be music on right now, so keep that in mind for those that don't listen to music. Friday afternoon, May 6th. We're going to attempt to give a regional weather synopsis for the Midwest, including the South Central states and some other parts of the country. The main feature of this upcoming week is going to be the traffic jam, a remarkable weather map, really, due to the upper level low that's going to be becoming cut off as it moves to the East Coast. This low pressure system will remain in the western Atlantic waters and is not going to move eastward. In fact, eventually it's going to start to move westward. This is going to trap an upper level ridge and an area of high pressure right here in the Midwest and the South Central states. The high pressure looks like it's located, the center of it is a little bit in south of Louisiana or southern Louisiana. It remains there at least for the first several days of the week, probably through the entire week. This high pressure will bring a south flow of hot and humid air, especially when you combine that with the low pressure that will remain towards just east of the Rockies, continuous low pressure moving up the Rockies, up north. There's 1, 2, maybe 3 of them will develop this week. Out ahead of these low pressure systems, southerly flow will be increased. This will bring breezy to windy conditions over all areas that are receiving heat and humidity. Temperatures will soar well into the 90s to 105 degrees over in western Dallas. Parts of the western portions of the Dallas area, or areas to the west of Dallas, which have lower humidity, where dew points drop into the 50s, we'll see those temperatures rise to near 105 degrees. Much of Dallas, where the humidity is higher, where dew points will be 70 degrees, temperatures will be in the mid to upper 90s. Either way, records are likely to be broken Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, or at least tied in the Dallas area. Records will be tied near record warmth or broken in the St. Louis area for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday as well. The Chicago area will see the higher humidity arrive on Tuesday. Warmer temperatures come in Monday. The summer warmth in terms of temperatures comes in Monday already, but the humidity arrives on Tuesday. There is a lack of clarity right now in regards to what's going to be happening in South Bend, Indiana. And in general, even the Chicago area, things are not 100% clear. And in Minneapolis, it's really up in the air right now. That's due to a frontal boundary that's going to remain up in the upper Midwest for the Minneapolis area. What's going to determine where this frontal boundary goes is thunderstorms, and that's a big problem for accuracy in a forecast because the boundary will move south. If thunderstorms develop, the frontal boundary will move south of the outflow of the thunderstorms, but nobody knows exactly when or where these thunderstorms are going to develop as usual. Thunderstorms are not so forecastable. And it's going to make a very big difference as to whether the front is right over Minneapolis or just to the north of Minneapolis. If the front goes just to the north of Minneapolis, hot and humid weather, or at least temperatures in the 80s, will be in the Minneapolis area for at least a couple days this week. In the Chicago area, Lake Michigan, along with that thunderstorm complication, remains as well. The thunderstorm complication is less of an issue in Chicago, and it's more of the lake breeze. This type of a situation, this type of a heat wave, is not the normal type of heat wave where you have an extension of the Bermuda High, where you have a south flow which pushes hot and humid air, even a southwest flow. Out on the East Coast, we actually are going to have below normal temperatures for much of the week due to that low pressure system causing a northerly flow for that area. This means this southeasterly flow will bring in warm, humid air into the Chicago area. The problem with having an easterly component to the south wind is Lake Michigan. The waters are really cold right now, 46 degrees, and parts of the Chicago area are going to be influenced by that lake. So temperatures are going to drop drastically at times over parts of Chicago for probably every day this upcoming week. Maybe not Tuesday, but probably Tuesday as well. For the St. Louis area, there's more clarity. And for Kansas City, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, as we mentioned, heat and humidity will remain in the St. Louis area. After Thursday, towards the end of the week, the upper level ridge starts to flatten a little bit. However, it remains strong. So temperatures will go down a little bit, but they will remain above normal. In fact, there really is no end to this warm weather pattern right now within the foreseeable future, within the 7-day forecast cycle, and even a little bit beyond. The trough to our west looks like it will likely eventually move east. So the date right now a week from Monday would be a good estimation. And that's when forecasters are estimating that this trough to our west will push east of the area, bringing in colder temperatures. The Des Moines, Iowa National Weather Service feels that high temperatures in the 50s will no longer happen for the remainder of the season. That's over with. That means that the final push of cold air that usually happens May 11th or a little bit after May 11th, they feel will not be happening this year, despite the fact we've had an unusually cold April. And one would think there's still plenty of cold air around when you get to the dip in the jet stream by that trough on the west coast. The Southern Louisiana National Weather Service also feels that the cooler air, whatever is cool for them, it's over with. So we've now transitioned, according to both of them, we've now transitioned into a season where there's no more winter cold that is expected in our area. Not necessarily summer heat. We're only in May. So we're going to have our first taste of real summer heat for places like St. Louis, Missouri, dew points in the 70s, very serious stuff. The high dew point air is a result of all the flooding that's taking place, despite the fact that the cornfields are not out yet. Still, the dew points are going to be higher here in the Midwest, as the Kansas City National Weather Service pointed out that the dew points will be higher here because of the floods that have taken place. That's going to reduce temperatures a little bit. Nonetheless, temperatures should still be able to tie the records or perhaps even break the records for a couple days this week for cities like St. Louis and Kansas City. High temperatures, low 90s for many of these locations, but the St. Louis area has a pretty good shot of getting into the mid-90s, especially on Tuesday. Thunderstorms may develop. The highest chance for thunderstorms really is Tuesday, sometime on Tuesday for all three of these cities, Kansas City, even Dallas as well, all Dallas, Kansas City, St. Louis, and Chicago. There's a complication on Tuesday for the Chicago area. There's going to be these continuous thunderstorm complexes that develop in the upper Midwest, and they're going to move south. The expectation is that they're going to dissipate before they hit the Chicago area. If that happens, if that expectation is fulfilled, if that's what happens, we will indeed see 70-degree dew points in the Chicago area that's not affected by the lake Tuesday afternoon. So we're going to put heat indices in the low or mid-90s, serious heat, especially if for our first exposure to the summer season this year. If the thunderstorm complexes manage to make it into the Chicago area, that will bust the forecast for Tuesday. For Chicago, you can't really say temperatures will no longer be in the 50s because the lake water temperature is 46 degrees. So in most likelihood, we will see a continuation of that at times, at least in through mid-June. Sunday afternoon, May 8th, you're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. Regional weather synopsis for the Midwest, the South Central states, along with other parts of the country. A high-pressure ridge developed over Texas over the past couple of days, along with an upper-level ridge or a mid-level ridge, will be moving into the Midwest and set itself up right along the Mississippi River Valley. This ridge will reach peak intensity on Wednesday, right over the St. Louis area, along with the Chicago area, including other states as well. This high pressure is going many, many miles up into the atmosphere, which will likely produce a suppression of clouds and precipitation. There still does remain a slight chance for thunderstorms late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning for some locations, but the chances are quite slim. Right around the ridge, there is expected to be continuous thunderstorm development, and complexes that develop especially in the upper Midwest will move southeast, and they are expected to dissipate before reaching the Chicago area. There is a possibility that they might not dissipate, or at least one of them might not. Another area of thunderstorm complex will develop in the Texas area, especially as the ridge moves away from that area. Texas saw record heat yesterday, 112 degrees in Rio Grande Village, Texas. Heat advisories were issued for today as temperatures soared above 105 degrees again. Dallas-Fort Worth seeing highs in the mid and upper 90s with some humidity and breezy conditions. There's also severe fire weather hazards to an extreme level over much of New Mexico and West Texas as well. Record heat is expected over many of the states here in the Midwest due to this high-pressure ridge. The high-pressure ridge produces heating by compressional warming. The air is really warm aloft, and there's a lot of pressure that pushes down on the air, causing the air to be reduced, but it releases its energy, which gets translated into an increase in temperatures. That, in combination with sunshine and south winds, will be responsible for bringing record heat to the St. Louis area. Sometimes there are also winds that blow off the Ozark Plateau, which increase temperatures in the St. Louis area by a few degrees. Kansas City, Missouri will also be seeing record heat with temperatures in the low 90s. Other places in Missouri and Iowa, along with places to the south, especially in Arkansas, will be seeing highs in the lower and sometimes even mid-90s, but generally lower 90s. Either way, record heat is expected. Many of these records are from 75 to 100 years ago. For example, Quincy, Illinois, Hannibal, Missouri. Record from 1895. One of these days, it's expected to be broken. The weather pattern that the Midwest will be under this week is called a Omega block. This is the same weather pattern that brought the Northwest Pacific Heatwave, and also the heights of the upper level ridge resemble the heights of the Northwest Pacific Heatwave as well, along with the 1995 heatwave, the 2012 heatwave in July, and the 2012 heatwave in March. It's actually in the record territory for this time of the year, and it's an almost record for any time of the year. This type of a weather pattern consists of a cut-off low, a low-pressure system, and a low-pressure trough that's on the east coast or actually moved on to the Atlantic, but it's cut off from the jet stream. This means the system no longer is moving from west to east, or if it is, it's moving very slowly. In this case, the system's actually going to start to turn backwards towards the end of the week. As it does so, the ridge will no longer be squeezed in between the two troughs. Therefore, the ridge is going to flatten and therefore weaken, but still remain strong. Areas to the east of the Mississippi River will see slightly lower temperatures. Parts of the Chicago area will most likely hit 90 degrees. The forecast for West Rogers Park in Chicago is extra complicated because there is no westerly component to the south wind most of the time. That's not expected as of now. In St. Louis, many of the days will consist of a southwest flow. In Chicago, it's generally a south flow, sometimes even a southeast flow. If you don't have a western component to the south wind, the lake breeze tends to take over, especially when it's hot outside. The hot air rises inland, and that encourages air to come in off the lake. It's specifically because it's so hot. That's why West Rogers Park might end up being so cool during the afternoon. Temperatures in the Chicago area may get really warm early in the afternoon, and many places may stay warm the remainder of the day. West Rogers Park has a good chance, at least probably Wednesday, and perhaps other days as well, for temperatures to drop drastically to lower levels. Hopefully remain pleasant in the 70s, but historically speaking, climatologically speaking, it has not always been that way. Even if the temperatures do drop in the afternoon, temperatures warm right back up at night, and the following morning it's warm again. So warm days in West Rogers Park from the morning through midday, maybe even a little bit after midday, and then there's a questionable period for the afternoon and evening. The mid-Atlantic and the southeast parts of the United States will be under a north flow due to this low-pressure trough and low-pressure system off the western Atlantic. However, the system will be off the seaboard far enough that the clouds will be taken with it. Sunshine will prevail, and temperatures will still be nice, even in the mid-Atlantic area. A couple more very unique things about the weather pattern this week. The Gulf Coast will be influenced by this cool and dry high pressure in New England as that thing gets squeezed either north or south of this low pressure system, south of the low pressure system, which is going backwards to northern Florida, and it actually goes into Louisiana. It goes underneath us. A very strange thing, but the dew points will be lower in Louisiana than they are in the Midwest. Water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico are between 77 and 81 degrees. Normally that would produce dew points between 67 and 71 degrees along the Gulf Coast, and that's in fact what they probably will be until they get influenced by this drier air. Record heat is expected even in Louisiana on Tuesday, possibly Wednesday as well. As the south flow flows over flooding, which has taken place in the Midwest, there's different approaches between the computer models as to how high the dew points will be. Some of the computer models, which are not available to the public, are forecasting dew points to be between 65 and 70, and that's generally what the forecasters from the National Weather Service and forecasters in general are forecasting. The computer models which are available to the public show dew points going up into the mid-70s. The Kansas City National Weather Service explained with good logic as to why dew points would be so high, and that's because of the floods. If dew points do go into the mid-70s, borderline heat advisory criteria is possible in the St. Louis area, especially Wednesday or Tuesday or Thursday. The European computer model that's available to the public through windy.com indicates dew point may hit 77 degrees in parts of the St. Louis area Wednesday evening. The National Weather Service forecasts indicate that dew points may approach 70 degrees, but not too much higher than that. A dew point of 77 degrees generally makes the temperature feel about 14 degrees warmer than they actually are. That will be taking place at a time when temperatures are in the upper 80s, bringing the heat index to about 100 or 102. The official forecast from the National Weather Service is not forecasting dew points to be that high. Heat indices to be that high, they should remain in the mid-90s. If dew points do become that high, that is record-breaking humidity for this time of the year. And it's something which is going to be quite difficult to do considering we do not have the corn crop yet. Another city which is dealing with its own complications and clarity in an accurate forecast is Minneapolis. But even Minneapolis should hit 90 degrees by the time Thursday comes along. Temperatures were well into the 80s today. At least they were forecasted to be. Temperatures will likely go back well into the 80s on Wednesday. Since the front around is separating the cooler air from the warmer air, its position is being determined by thunderstorms. It's difficult at times to figure out exactly where that front will be, and could be difficult to forecast the temperatures for Minneapolis. Fronts in a blocking weather pattern tend to be influenced more by the outflow of the thunderstorms than anything else. Any thunderstorms that do develop could very easily push the front south of the city. By Thursday, a low pressure system, a strong storm system along the plains right east of the Rockies will bring a lot more momentum to the warm front and help push the whole thing north regardless of thunderstorms. Two low pressure systems, strong low pressure systems, will be developing just east of the Rockies this week. The first one in the beginning of the week and the second one towards the end of the week or the mid part of the week. Both of these storm systems will be responsible for increasing the south flow since air around these storm systems move counterclockwise. The combination of the clockwise air moving around the high pressure centered just east of the Mississippi River and the counterclockwise air moving around the low pressure just east of the Rockies, the pressure gradient will intensify wind speeds and bring winds from the deep south. The south winds will also cover multiple layers in the atmosphere, not just surface winds, but the south winds will go well up into the atmosphere. Confidence is increasing that low pressure trough will move east and bring its cold front through the country. That low pressure trough will combine with the low pressure that's moving backwards onto the northern Florida area, producing one gigantic low pressure trough over much of the country. Boston, Massachusetts will be influenced by this upper-level ridge. Temperatures will soar well into the 80s, and there is a potential for some counties perhaps to hit 90 degrees. Areas further to the south will be too close to this low pressure system to be so significantly influenced by the summer heat. The ridge will continue to break down, and the expectation is that we will return to an active weather pattern next week with near normal or even perhaps a continuation of above normal temperatures. One final point is any thunderstorm that does develop this week has the potential to be severe. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone a good day. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Monday, May 9th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. We are in the midst of the Midwest's first summer heat wave of the season. It's certainly a really exciting event for those people that have been waiting for summer really all year. And for even those people that have not been waiting for summer, at least in the initial stages of this heat wave, the weather starts off beautiful for many locations. The heat and humidity really start to come in at full force later on today, really more like tomorrow for the St. Louis area. Even today already, it's going to start to get real warm. The real humidity comes in tomorrow, but the real humidity comes in on Wednesday. And again, the European the dew points rising into the 70s Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday evening. If the heat index does reach 100 or higher in St. Louis, Wednesday late afternoon or evening would be the time this is going to happen. Temperatures are going to start to drop Wednesday evening while the dew points rise. The rising dew points, that's going to absorb some of the temperatures, but temperatures for many people are going to feel hottest Wednesday late afternoon and evening. There's another reason for this as well. That's because there's going to be very little wind Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday evening. Up until that point, we're going to have breezy conditions out of the southwest. Here's the latest latest forecast that I think is going to be happening in the Chicago area. We have high temperatures. It's going to be very similar to St. Louis in regards to the official high temperatures. Let me take that back a little bit. The regular temperatures in the St. Louis area will be similar to what the official high is in Chicago, about 90. But the official high in St. Louis will be in the mid-90s. I just happen to know Lambert Field, for whatever reason, it gets to 94. It's going to hit 94. I mean, highs in the mid-90s there. Okay, but the temperatures, generally speaking, in the St. Louis area will remain in the low 90s. Here in the Chicago area, much of the region will see high temperatures, upper 80s, some 90-degree areas as well. But now we have to talk about West Rogers Park over here. So West Rogers Park, the south winds that are coming into West Rogers Park do go over a lake at some point. They are going over very cold waters of Lake Michigan, but not much. So the warm air will be moderated. It will be a moderation of warm air for most of the day, but you can't rule out a few minutes of getting a direct wind from the heat. That can't be ruled out. So the high temperatures here in West Rogers Park will range from mid-70s to upper 80s, and things will be pretty comfortable. That's going to be for tomorrow, probably today, highs in the 70s. Tomorrow, highs mid-70s to upper 80s. And even if it's not in the upper 80s, temperatures will feel comfortable, will feel warm. On Wednesday, temperatures might actually be the hottest on Wednesday, but that's also when we're most likely to see a backdoor lake cold front come through Wednesday afternoon. And this is when things become very complex. It becomes difficult to figure out what's going to happen at that point. The traditional way that forecasts have always been worded in this city is that high temperature near 90, but cooler near the lake. High temperature, let's say near 90, turning colder near the lake. Sometimes highs near 90, temperatures dropping into the 70s by the lake. That's how it's usually worded. But we know, people who live by the lake know that it's much more drastic than that. So we're dealing with lake water temperatures in the 40s. High temperatures Wednesday, mid-80s, maybe warmer, mid-70s maybe. Mid-70s to upper 80s, the same routine again on Wednesday for West Rogers Park. But Wednesday afternoon, that's the one day where the computer models show vividly a front coming in off the lake, taking over the whole area with temperatures dropping into the 60s at least, while O'Hare Airport basks in 86-degree heat, the West Rogers Park area is going to be at 69 degrees. That's later on in the day on Wednesday. So, and 69, by the way, doesn't really mean 69. It means anywhere between 46 and 69. Okay, so hopefully, if we're lucky, we'll have 69. Winds are coming from the east at best. I mean, the worst case scenario seems like the winds will be from the east, not the northeast. So that reduces our chances of seeing a 46-degree reading. So in most likelihood, the 66 or 69, something like that, makes the most sense. It's going to be very difficult to get temperatures in the 40s if winds are not from the northeast. Okay? But realize we are right next to an enormous body of water which has a surface water temperature of 46 degrees at its south end, and it's even colder in the middle parts of the lake. And we have lived through this type of stuff before where everyone says it's warm, heat advisories, everything, and we need our winter coats here in West Rogers Park. So that's something to keep an eye on for Wednesday afternoon, more so Wednesday afternoon than any other day this week. Thursday, for West Rogers Park, it might even be warmest on Thursday. Temperatures going into the low 90s for Minneapolis, Minnesota. High temperatures well into the 80s for South Bend, Indiana. Highs in the mid 80s for many days this week. Upper 80s. The ridge breaks down slightly when it hits South Bend, so temperatures might not hit 90, but on the other hand, it's going to be a little bit less humid in South Bend, but still quite humid. Temperatures still might end up hitting 90. Boston, Massachusetts, I can't find where these forecasts are getting their information from that say the temperatures are going up into the mid-80s, possibly 90 degrees, but nonetheless, the National Weather Service tells us that Boston, Massachusetts might hit 90 degrees this week as the ridge heads on over there. It does not affect the rest of the East Coast. Surprisingly, Baltimore does not get affected by it. This is going to be one of those few times where places, if it's not Boston, but other places up north are going to be much, much warmer than the mid-Atlantic area and even places off into the southeast. We have drier air blowing into the New Orleans area, coming out of New England. It's doing a whole interesting route over there. But for now, it's warm and humid, even hot and humid. Even in Louisiana, we have record heat in that area as well. Arkansas will probably be the state that's going to break the most records this week. It's Arkansas. If you see the map, it's also because Arkansas, the records are not really that high to start off with. The real high records are in places like in Kansas and Nebraska. They're going to have the hardest time breaking records, but even they will be breaking records. It's difficult. You have to realize with all of the moisture in the soil right now from all the floods, it's difficult to get those temperatures to get real hot. The sun is not as efficient at heating things up when you have lots of water vapor in the air, but nonetheless, records are going to be broken. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone a good day. Good afternoon. It is May 10th. Is that correct? It's May 10th, Tuesday afternoon, and this is really just in case there's not time to do a podcast later on in the day. I just wanted to get this in. St. Louis, Missouri's current temperature is 89 degrees. Dew points have indeed gone into the 70s. 71 degrees is the dew point. Columbia, Missouri has a dew point of 72 degrees. Quincy, Illinois has a dew point of 73 degrees. And those are the only three cities that haven't checked so far. 73 degrees for the temperature of 87 degrees, producing a heat index of 94. Of those three cities, Columbia has a heat index of 98 degrees. National Weather Service is expecting a high around 90 degrees with dew points in the mid-70s. The National Weather Service has finally been maskim, finally has acknowledged that dew points will be in the mid-70s, and they're already in the low to mid-70s. Dew points, again, in the mid-70s for today with a high near 90, a heat index around 100 degrees. For tomorrow, high temperatures in the mid-90s. For areas that experience lower dew points, highs in the upper 80s. For areas that experience dew points in the upper 70s. Dew points in the upper 70s. This is, it's just amazing because last week I took a picture of it, and you could see on the podcast itself that this was in the forecast from a week ago, and the National Weather Service is finally acknowledging it today that dew points will be in the mid and even upper 70s. No matter where you are tomorrow, peak heat index will be 100 degrees. If you're in a place where temperatures are in the mid 90s, the heat index will be 100, and if you're a place where the temperatures in the upper 80s, the heat index will also be 100, and the real sauna-like conditions come late tomorrow afternoon. Same with today, late this afternoon, but I think the winds are going to be much lighter tomorrow. I'm sure there have been records that have been broken. There's probably so much more to say because I'm only talking about one city here, maybe 3 cities, one city, and there's just so much to say. But this is very, very exciting news, very exciting news. So I wish everyone a wonderful day. Thank you for listening. Good evening. It is May 10th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. Tomorrow is a hot and humid day. We have heat and humidity going into the Chicago area. High today was 92 degrees at Midway Airport. We broke a record. Tomorrow, it's a repeat. It's a repeat for many areas in the Chicago area, possibly a couple degrees lower at Midway. Highs near 90 degrees, heat indices in the mid-90s. Another 90-degree heat day tomorrow. We also tied a record at O'Hare Airport today of 90 degrees, but not officially because in order to tie the record, it has to be 90 for 5 minutes straight, and it was not 90 for 5 minutes straight. We're going to have that heat and humidity comes right back into the Chicago area. Climatologically speaking, what usually happens when you get stuff like that is our area, in the morning, it's warm and it's humid, and then we have a crashing cold front that comes in off the lake in the afternoon. We warm up again Thursday. Temperatures go back to near 90 degrees over much of the Chicago area. Warm and humid this weekend with high temperatures in the 80s for Friday and Shabbos for Saturday. Tropical storm, a subtropical storm developing off the mid-Atlantic coast. That's a possibility. This low pressure system that developed here in the country that was producing 4 or 5 inches of rain, it's been here for a long time. It already moved off the Atlantic coast, and it's partially responsible for this heat wave here in the Midwest. The thing is making a U-turn. Usually those things weaken. It's a cut-off low. Usually they just fall apart. Not this one. This one has a possibility of becoming a named subtropical storm. The chances are low. Even if it doesn't, it's going to clobber the mid-Atlantic, somewhere between the southeast areas and the mid-Atlantic area, somewhere between there with lots of rain. I think it's actually more in the southeast part of the United States. I think sunny and warm conditions for the mid-Atlantic area, but near normal conditions for the mid-Atlantic area. This warm ridge is going to be affecting the New England area where summer heat, their version of summer heat with record warmth headed for that area. Caribou, Maine, possibly upper 70s. That would be a record, and many areas might see their first 80-degree reading in Maine and places right around there, including southern Canada. Thank you for listening. Have a good night. It's Wednesday, May 11th. Well, West Rogers Park dodged 2 bullets today, and the area remained with warm, pleasant conditions throughout the day. Actually, in the morning, the temperatures were starting off the same way that they were starting off every place else. We were on the track to receive a hot and humid day, but about 11:30 or noon, the winds shifted and there was an easterly component to the wind. Temperatures stopped rising. Temperatures made it to about 85 degrees in West Rogers Park, and then temperatures started to drop, eventually going down to somewhere between 69 and 70 degrees. But it felt warm due to the humidity. It felt really nice, actually. What's amazing is that not only have we transitioned over to summer weather in the areas which are affected by this upper level ridge, but even the places which are affected by the lake breeze are getting a summer version of this lake breeze. May is known for these pneumonia backdoor cold fronts, and we just didn't get it today here in our area. And in fact, even along the lake, it felt almost like August. It felt like a lake breeze that would develop in August. It was quite amazing. And when you go further north, the temperatures reflect more of a May situation with temperatures in the 50s. That doesn't necessarily mean it was cold there. You would have to speak to someone there. This is the time of the year when temperatures don't really tell you much of the story. It's very difficult to figure out if it was cold or warm based upon the temperature and based upon the high temperature and the low temperature as we see here today. Temperatures went into the mid-80s today. The dew points were in the low 70s, so the heat indices approached 90, low 90s, but then the temperatures dropped. Now, that was here in the West Rogers Park area, which actually the thermometer, these weather stations that they have all over the place, the weather station in Skokie that some of these weather services have access to reflects the West Rogers Park temperature better than some of the West Rogers Park temperatures, weather stations, which may not be so accurate. Now, if you go further west of Chicago, it was as hot can be. Take a place like Joliet. For some reason, Joliet tends to get really high dew points. Dew points went up to 74 degrees. Temperatures went into the mid-90s. How do you get hotter than that? Heat indices about 105 degrees or very close to 105. That whole area just intensely hot and humid. It's just, that was really a different air mass, really. It felt almost like we had three tracks here. One of them was for the Waukegan area. The other one was for the area in the West Rogers Park area, which I think we could even include East Rogers Park for the afternoon. I don't know about the morning. And then the brutal heat stayed off to our west. Record high temperature today occurred in both airports, both at Midway and at O'Hare. Temperature hit 90 degrees at O'Hare. Temperatures went into the low 90s again at Midway. St. Louis, Missouri had a high temperature of 94 degrees at least. It's possible it was 95. Temperatures at least 94 with a heat index of a minimal heat index for the max of 102 degrees for St. Louis. This is just this heat wave was forecasted very well, even more than a week ago. And we really dodged two bullets over here. The first one is actually more significant than the second. So if people don't appreciate the weather that we have right now, maybe we'll just throw in this piece of information. There was a complex of thunderstorms that was expected to develop last night. Initially, meteorologists were not sure if it was going to develop or not. But by about 7 o'clock, it was almost a certainty. In fact, there were reports of a tornado watch that was issued in Wisconsin, and the storms were getting going. But then nothing happened. But if those storms would have developed and they would have moved into the Chicago area between 10 p.m. last night and 3 a.m. as was originally expected, that would have brought the cold front through the area already by earlier today. And then this afternoon, we might have even had colder temperatures. We might have had the real cold stuff that comes in off the lake. But those thunderstorms never developed. So we got treated to really warm, nice weather this morning. And then the lake breeze version we got this afternoon was right on par with what that European computer model said. Nothing more significant than that, despite the fact we had 46-degree waters and despite the fact that, there was good reason to believe that winds were not just from the southeast, but even from the east, and even areas right along the lake where temperatures did drop into the low 60s, there still was really high humidity, so it had a different feel to it. It did not have a winter feel to it. It continued to have a summer feel to it. We're dodging another bullet next week, and I'm going to explain what I mean. Around May 11th, or a little bit after May 11th, around May 11th, there's a winter. I've been calling it the blackberry winter, but it's not blackberry. It's just, I forgot what it is. So I'm saying blackberry. I could just look it up. But it's every year around this time we get our final blast of cold air that comes into the region. This should be the cold air. It's been unseasonably cold on the West Coast. That air is coming to our area. This upper level ridge is moving off to the east. The trough on the West Coast is moving to our area. One would think that should be the air. That should be the air, that final blast of cold air. Realize it's been unseasonably cold over there. Also realize that it's hard to remember because it's been so hot the past couple of days. But just this past April, we had unusually cold air aloft. Actually, it was record-breaking cold continuously. In the atmosphere, upper atmosphere, we had record-breaking cold. There's plenty of it. Forecasters already from a week and a half ago were not expecting a return to the cold air, as the Des Moines National Weather Service pointed out the best. Louisiana also pointed it out, but the Des Moines has so much more significance to it because if there's going to be a city that gets affected by the cold air, it's going to be Des Moines. And they said we're no longer expecting high temperatures to fall under 60 degrees. Well, and then you have Chicago with the 46-degree water lake. And we're dodging that bullet too. But next week, the air is coming here. It's going to be a moderated form. Temperatures might even be above normal. By the time the air hits here, another heat wave develops in the southern plains, the desert southwest, and in Texas for next week. It's going to try to spread into the Midwest. It doesn't look like it's going to make it at this time, but it just looks like it's going to be a real nice week. That's the 3 bullets that we're dodging. The warm and humid weather is expected to continue through Friday and Shabbos. The ridge is breaking down slightly. That means there probably will be a little bit more clouds. Temperatures will be a little bit cooler. That also decreases the chances of having a lake breeze, a real significant lake breeze. And what also needs to be discussed, we have to revisit the cornfield issue and the Dust Bowl years, because if one reflects upon the past few days, they might have some serious questions in regards to how much of an influence did the farmers really have on those Dust Bowl years in the 1930s, and how much of an influence did the cornfields really have on Midwest humidity. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone a wonderful night. Around May 11th, there's a winter. It's every year around this time we get our final blast of cold air that comes into the region. This should be the cold air. It's been unseasonably cold on the West Coast. That air is coming to our area. This upper level ridge is moving off to the east. The trough on the West Coast is moving to our area. One would think that should be the air. That should be the air, that final blast of cold air. Realize it's been unseasonably cold over there. Also realize that it's hard to remember because it's been so hot the past couple of days. But just this past April, we had unusually cold air aloft. Actually, it was record-breaking cold continuously. In the atmosphere, upper atmosphere, we had record-breaking cold. There's plenty of it. Forecasters already from a week and a half ago we're not expecting a return to the cold air, as the Des Moines National Weather Service pointed out the best. Louisiana also pointed it out, but the Des Moines has so much more significance to it, because if there's going to be a city that gets affected by the cold air, it's going to be Des Moines. And they said we're no longer expecting high temperatures to fall under 60 degrees. Well, and then you have Chicago with the 46-degree water lake, and we're dodging that bullet too. But next week, the air is coming here. It's going to be a moderated form. Temperatures might even be above normal. By the time the air hits here, another heat wave develops in the southern plains, the desert southwest, and in Texas for next week. It's going to try to spread into the Midwest. It doesn't look like it's going to make it at this time, but it just looks like it's going to be a real nice week. That's the 3 bullets that we're dodging. The warm and humid weather is expected to continue through Friday and Shabbos. The ridge is breaking down slightly. That means there probably will be a little bit more clouds. Temperatures will be a little bit cooler. That also decreases the chances of having a lake breeze, a real significant lake breeze. And what also needs to be discussed, we have to revisit the cornfield issue and the Dust Bowl years, because if one reflects upon the past few days, they might have some serious questions in regards to how much of an influence did the farmers really have on those Dust Bowl years in the 1930s, and how much of an influence did the cornfields really have on Midwest humidity. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone a wonderful night.